those council members who wish to make statements. I give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
We are grateful for the briefings that we've heard, which paint a difficult picture of continuing fighting and suffering of civilians in the southeast of Ukraine. The substance of what's happened, the reason is clear. Kiev is trying to use the clashes that they themselves started as a pretext to completely pull out of implementation of the Minsk agreements of 12 February 2015, enshrined in Security Council Resolution 2202. Spin it as the Ukrainians might try, including by initiating today's Security Council meeting and making statements that are completely divorced from reality. All the information, including open recognition by Ukrainian officials, indeed the president of the country, is so overwhelming that they cannot deny that the destructive policy of Kiev and their armed forces can't be denied. On 3rd January, Defense Minister of Ukraine, Poltorak, confirmed the seizure by Ukrainian army of new positions in the grey area, demagogically announcing that this was not in violation of the Minsk agreements, since the seized territory belonged to Ukraine anyway. On 17th January, Interior Minister Avakov, speaking before Ukrainian border guards, called on them to prepare to seize the state borders in 2017. 22nd of January, President Poroshenko publicly announced that Ukraine would not be implementing any of the political reforms until full control over the border with Russia was restored. This approach fully distorts the content of the complex of measures in Minsk and is manifestly unfeasible. Finally, yesterday, Deputy Defense Minister Pavlovsky chipped in, boasting to the press. He said, 1 meter after 1 meter, step by step, where possible, our boys will have heroically moved forward. This is blatantly militaristic rhetoric, and it has very realistic consequences, as have clearly been traced in the latest reports of the OSCE monitoring mission. Observers have confirmed that the escalation was provoked by Ukrainian security forces. The SMM camera at the Oktyabrska mine recorded on the night of 27th, 28th January that intensive fighting between the Ukrainian security forces and militia followed gunfire coming from the northwest, in other words, coming from Ukrainian security forces. At the same time, in Avdiivka, cameras documented intensive artillery shelling that began with 5 shells moving north to south trajectory, also coming from the Ukrainian security forces. The next night, 28th to 29th January, in Avdiivka, the SMM camera recorded 15 shells coming from the northwest, heading southeast, again coming from Kiev security forces. They were attacking militia positions. This was followed by several hours of fighting in the Avdiivka industrial zone. Similar events took place in the south flank also during these days. According to the SMM camera in CHURKIN, there was intensive firefight on the night of 28th January. It broke out following 20 shells going west to east, again coming from Ukrainian army positions against militia positions. A skirmish subsequently broke out there too. According to the SMM, on 26th, 29th January, following indiscriminate shelling of villages under militia control from the direction where Ukrainian security forces were deployed, civilians in Bryanka were wounded. Dozens of homes in Bryanka, Donetsk, Kalinovka, Zainchika, Kalinova, Alexandrovka and Pervomaiska were destroyed. The mission continued to document hardware of the Ukrainian army in the security zone. On 26th, 29th January, observers noted 4 tanks in Avdiivka and 3 cannons in Nikolaevka, as well as the disappearance from security forces armories of 76 tanks, 10 mortars and 18 cannons. Ukrainian army armories contained only 6% of hardware meant for withdrawal. This set the stage then for the latest outbreak of tension, which has only subsequently got worse. According to information of yesterday's monitoring mission report, the number of violations has risen to 10,300 explosions in 24 hours. Moreover, statistics on restrictions on access to SMM observers speak for themselves. 7 out of 9 cases the Ukrainian armed forces were responsible for. These figures show that instead of efforts to normalize the situation in the Donbass and to seek out reasonable compromises under the Normandy format and as part of the contact group, the Ukrainian authorities are desperately, frantically trying to achieve a military settlement to the conflict. What also sticks out is one other interesting feature. The serious escalation in the Donbass surprisingly coincided with an increase in foreign visits by the Ukrainian leadership. Kiev intends in this way to keep on the international agenda the crisis that they themselves started, and at the same time suck in, with their reckless confrontational policy, newly elected heads of state. But of course, the Ukrainian leadership today, they need money, which best of all they can swindle out of the European Union, certain European countries, and from the US and from international financial institutions, by pretending to be the victims of aggression. The humanitarian price of this policy of Kiev doesn't seem to bother them much, it seems. Homes in villages, schools, hospitals have been shelled by all kinds of weapons, including high-caliber artillery and multiple rocket systems, which, according to the Minsk complex of measures of 12 February 2015, should long have been withdrawn from the contact line. Among the civilian population, there are dead and injured. Ukrainian security force attacks have damaged the Donetsk water filter station, the Avdiivka coke factory. The lives of workers in the mines are under threat. To prevent a humanitarian disaster and to return the situation to the political track, the international community must be firm and consistent. Here, the Security Council sent a big message on 31st of January, where from a single position, an immediate ceasefire was called for and unswerving compliance with the Minsk complex of measures. Yesterday, along similar lines, the contact group spoke out, calling for full compliance with the ceasefire regime and a pullback of hardware falling under the auspices of the Minsk agreements. We expect swift action from the Special Monitoring Mission with a view to swiftly de-escalating the situation. Particular responsibility here lies on the participants in the Normandy format, as well as on those who can exert the greatest leverage on Kiev. We trust that those with common sense within Ukraine itself, and also all those keen to settle issues of this kind through political means, will not allow the situation in southeast Ukraine to develop along the worst-case scenario. On the contrary, that they'll focus their attention and efforts in order to properly implement the Minsk agreements. Distinguished colleagues, today President Poroshenko said that personally he'd given instructions to the Ukrainian delegation to call for today's meeting in the Security Council. Opening today's meeting, the Ukrainian PR has proposed afterwards developing a Security Council document building on the statement we adopted on 31st of January. Sadly, what we heard today from the Ukrainian delegation is the odious statements show that the Ukrainian delegation here in New York continued to try and saber rattling, and that's a source of great regret.